The whole town smelled like cola nut and palm wine. Music from the town hall spilled into the street. People sang for Adana and Obina. They sang so loud that the sun seemed to laugh. Adana stood under a small arch of flowers. She looked at Obina and her heart felt big like a drum. Obina wore a white shirt and a coral bead around his neck. He looked proud but soft at the same time. He always smiled with his eyes first, then his mouth. That is the smile Adana loved. "Are you ready?" Obina asked, taking her hand. Adana laughed, a small nervous laugh. "I have waited my whole life for this," she said. They walked into the hall together. Friends and family clapped. Children ran around with ribbons. Old women threw blessings. The air felt warm and safe. Obina's uncle, Ezekwesili, sat near the front. He clapped like everyone else, but his hands were not steady. He watched Obina more than he watched anyone else. When Obina looked that way, Ezekwesili smiled like a man who hid a worry behind his teeth. Chisholm, Adana's sister, watched from the side. She held a tray of cola. Her face was pale. She smiled a little when the couple passed, but her eyes did not light up like before. The smile did not reach the corners. She kept stepping back, then forward. She seemed to be fighting with something inside her. Obiora, Obina's cousin, wore bright clothes and a loud laugh. He moved through the people like he owned the name of the party. He hugged men he barely knew. He drank like the music was his. He looked at Obina and then away, like a man trying to hide that he wanted something he could not have. The ceremony felt like a promise. The priest spoke about love and respect. The crowd cheered every time he said, "Obina," and "Adana." People tossed rice. Someone shouted, "Long life!" The sound was like a river of voices. After the prayers, the food was served. There were bowls of pepper soup that smelled spicy and good. There was meat roasted until it was brown and shiny. Children ran with plates that needed carrying. Adana sat at a long table beside Obina. They leaned close and talked in small voices. Adana loved the way Obina listened. Like every small thing she said mattered. "Do you remember our first meeting?" Obina asked, smiling. Adana smiled back. "How could I forget? You spilled yam on my skirt." They both laughed. Laughter made them light. Around them, life continued. People sang, people ate, people laughed. It should have been the best night of their lives. Then the music changed. It slowed without anyone picking it. Obina stood up to greet an old teacher. He waved his hand and went to the table where drink and small plates waited. The hall felt bright and full. Adana watched him. He picked up a cup and lifted it like he was toasting the future. The cup touched his lips. He smiled and turned back toward her. The next thing was small and sudden. His face changed. One moment he was smiling. The next, his eyes flicked like a trapped bird. He grabbed his chest as if his heart had become heavy. He tried to speak. He could not finish the words. Saliva came from his mouth. His body stiffened and then shook. Adana felt the air fall out of the room. People stopped like statues. Noise did not come for a long second. Then a cry. Someone shouted, "Call a doctor!" Others pushed through chairs. Men lifted Obina to his feet, but his legs were gone. He sagged like a cloth dipped in rain. "Somebody help!" Adana screamed, hands at his face. Her fingers were shaking so much they could not hold steady. She called his name again and again. "Obina! Obina!" Someone ran outside to fetch more help. A woman beat a calabash like a drum to call attention. A small boy started crying so loud that the sound went straight through Adana. They carried Obina to a car. People whispered the word poison, but no one wanted to speak it loud. The car drove fast, tires hissing on hot ground. Adana sat inside and held his hand. It was cold already. She pressed her forehead to his knuckles as if she could warm him with breath. At the hospital, lights buzzed. Nurses moved like birds. A doctor pushed through the crowd, and for a few minutes, the room filled with loud, quick words that Adana could not understand. They put tubes and cloth and tested him. They tried to make his heart beat back. Adana held his hand and told him to stay. "Please stay," she said into his skin. No one could bring him back. They covered his face with a thin white sheet. Adana touched the sheet where his cheek would be. It felt soft and wrong, like a sun that stopped. When the doctor came out, his face was hard and tired. "We did everything we could," he said. "We think it was poisoning." Adana could not make the doctor's words fit in her head. Poison. The word was like a hole. She went back into the room and touched the cold hand under the sheet. She felt like someone had pulled a net away from her and let her fall. A quiet followed. The songs and the laughter were gone from the town hall. People moved slowly, like people who had been told to lower their voices. The children were taken away. The elders sat like old trees with leaves falling. Obina was taken home for a short time so friends could say goodbye. House lights were dim. Men stood around in a circle and held their heads low. Adana sat by the door and did not move. Her sister Chisholm stood not far away. She pressed her fingers hard together until the skin changed color. Her face showed she also was at war with herself. Ezekwesili came close to Adana and put a hand on her shoulder. "We will find who did this," he said, but his voice shook. He did not pull his hand away. It looked, for a moment, like the old kind man who had taught Obina to tie a tie. Then his hand slid away and his eyes looked far off. People prepared for a small burial. In the night, neighbors carried a small box to the house where Obina lay. Men said prayers. They sang low. Adana sat on a small stool and held nothing. She did not sleep. Her mind felt like it had been pulled into a tight place and left there to twist. At the grave, the ground was soft from hours of rain earlier that day. The priest spoke words that sounded old and slow. Adana stood by the hole and watched men lower the box. Her hands were cold, but she did not feel cold. Her mouth moved with the prayer, but the sounds felt far away. When the dirt hit the wood, a bird cried above. The sound scraped Adana's heart. People stepped back to give her space. Chisholm came to her and took one of her hands. For a split second Adana saw hope in Chisholm's face. Maybe they could fix it with wonder. But the hope slid away like water from a hand. After the burial, everyone drifted away like smoke. The road to the house was empty except for a few lamps. The music from earlier never returned. The town went back to sleep, but Adana's mind would not close its eyes. She walked to the grave one more time. Night was soft. The moon looked like a small coin. Adana kneeled by the mound and put both hands on the fresh soil. Her fingers sank in a little. She had loved Obina quietly and clearly. He had been her friend before he was her husband. He had helped fix the generator at her father's shop. He had laughed when she told jokes that were not funny. He had come home to her with a small fruit or a new joke even when day was hard. He had promised her things with his simple, steady voice. She had trusted him in a way that makes a person feel safe. Now he was gone. Adana pressed her face to the earth like a child. Tears came loud and fast. Her shoulders shook. The earth under her face smelled like the rain from earlier, and it felt close as a secret. She felt like a boat on a night with no stars. "Obina," she said, voice broken. "You must not sleep. You must not rest. Find who did this. You must not go without them being caught." Her words came out like a little sword. She did not know why she said them. She did not know if anyone could hear. But inside her something pulled and made her speak. She spoke as if she could hold him back. "Rise. Do not rest. Do not sleep. Find the wicked," she whispered. The words were small and fierce. The soil where her fingers pressed trembled just a tiny bit. A loose little stone jumped beside her hand. She thought it was her mind making the world move. She pressed harder into the dirt, feeling for the warmth that was not there. For a moment, the wind stirred even though the night was still. A few leaves shivered on the nearest tree. It could have been nothing, she told herself. Could have been the memory of the day that made her heart beat fast. She stood up slowly. The moon watched. Adana felt small and very tired. She walked back to the house and closed the door behind her. Inside, the lamp burned like a single eye watching. Adana could not sleep that night. She sat by the window and stared at the road where people would pass in the morning. She wanted them to come and tell her that it was a mistake, that Obina had simply gone to fetch water and would laugh when he returned. Nothing came. Her vow sat in her mouth like a seed. She had planted it without meaning to. She could not take it back. The world had soaked it up a little. She felt a pressure in her chest like a rope pulling. She did not know what would happen next. She only knew one thing. She would not stop until she found out who took Obina away. She would wake the town if she had to. She would ask and knock and plead. Outside, the night kept its small secrets. Inside, Adana held one that would not go away. She had asked the dead not to sleep. The question of what that meant sat heavy and strong between the stars. She touched the coral bead in her pocket that Obina had given her and felt it cool and real. The next morning would come with bright noise and gossip. But for now, the moon kept watching. Adana sat and listened to the quiet and waited for trouble to come. She could not know what her vow would do. She only knew the way her heart had broken and how the town had become a place with a hollow at its center. She closed her eyes and imagined Obina's smile, the one that began with his eyes. She wanted it back, even if it meant the whole world had to change. The next days moved like slow water. People came to the house. They said sad words and left. They brought food in bowls and sat down for a little while. They would not look at the empty place where Obina used to sit. They hugged Adana and then went away. Their hugs felt warm but thin, like cloth. Adana kept the coral bead in her hand. She moved it from one pocket to another. She put it on the table and looked at it and then held it again. It was small and smooth. It smelled like his skin. When she closed her eyes, she could see him folding his big hands around the bead and smiling. The memory made her breathe fast. The town felt different. Children whispered. Men spoke in low voices under trees. The market was loud, but the sound did not reach Adana's rooms. Every night she waited for sleep and it did not come. She sat with the window open and watched the road. She watched the moon like a guard who would tell her if anything strange moved. 3 days after the burial, the house felt colder than before. A wind came through the small cracks. A lamp shook even though there was no breeze. Adana thought she was tired. She told herself the wind was the wind. But the air tasted sharp like metal. She heard a sound. At first she thought it was a dog. Then she heard it again. Slow steps on the floor. Not outside. Not from the road. From inside the house. Adana froze. Her hands clenched the coral bead so hard it hurt. The steps came closer. They were slow and steady. Like someone walking to the family room where Obina's chair sat empty. "Who is there?" she called. But her voice was small. Her throat felt tight. No answer. The steps stopped. For a long time there was nothing but her breathing and the small creak of the old house. Then a shadow moved by the door. It was not a person. It was like the memory of a person. Adana stood up slowly. Her feet did not want to move. She had to force them. She walked to the doorway. The light from the lamp hid a shape in the dark and for a moment she thought she would faint. Then she saw his face. Obina stood in the doorway. He did not move like the living. His skin was pale and a little clear. His eyes looked like coals. They were not bright, but they were not gone. He wore the same white shirt he had at the wedding, but it looked dull. He did not speak. He only looked at her with that small soft smile that was always at the edge of his mouth. Adana wanted to run to him, to put her face on his chest and feel his heartbeat. She reached out and her hand passed through him like mist. Her fingers touched cold air. Her arm shivered. "Obina," she whispered. He raised a hand and pointed. Not at her. Not at the sky. He pointed at the wall where a picture hung. It was an old framed photo of Ezekwesili and Obina as boys. Obina had put it there the day they fixed the house roof. Ezekwesili had his hand on young Obina's shoulder. They both looked proud in that picture, like two men who had built something together. Obina's finger did not shake. Pointed straight at Ezekwesili's face in the frame. Adana felt hot all over. Her chest beat fast. Her hands went cold again. "What are you saying?" she asked. Her voice was like a thin thread. Obina did not speak. He looked at her for a long time as if he wanted her to understand. Then he turned slowly and faded away. Like light going under water, he was gone. The room felt empty but louder than before. Adana knelt on the floor. Her knees hit the hard wood. For a moment she wanted to laugh. For a moment she wanted to throw the coral bead and run. Instead she pressed the palm of her hand to the wall. Her fingers felt the picture frame. The photo looked normal. The two men in it looked like they could step out and be laughing. But the hush in the room said something had changed. She called Chisholm. Chisholm came running with her hair half loose and eyes full of fear that tried to hide. "What is it?" she asked, breathless. "Obinna," Adana said. Her voice broke. "He was here." Chisholm's mouth opened and closed. She reached for Adana and touched her face, like she was looking for proof. "Are you sure? You are not dreaming." Adana looked at her sister. "I am sure." He pointed. She could not say the name at first. Her voice caught. He pointed at Ezekwesili in the picture. Chisholm looked at the wall and then at the floor. Her face changed. The color left her mouth. "We should tell someone," she said at last. Her words were quick and small. "We should tell the town, the priest, the elders. They will know what to do." Adana shook her head. "No, not yet." She did not know why she said that. Maybe it was fear. Maybe she wanted to keep the secret in her hands for a little while, like a small bright stone. "Not yet," she said again. "I want to know. I want to be sure." They sat on the floor and waited. They drank palm wine that friends had left. The wine sat hot in Adana's belly and made her voice wobble when she tried to speak. They watched the picture on the wall and asked each other tired, scared questions. "Do you think he really came back?" Chisholm asked. "I know he did," Adana answered. She felt like someone who had fallen through ice and could not remember how to climb back. The memory of his cold fingers and the way he pointed was sharp in her head. "He was here." He pointed. "He wanted us to look." They tried to sleep that night, but every noise in the house sounded like footsteps. Every shadow looked like a face. At times both sisters heard a small whisper like a voice calling the name Obinna in the next room. They woke and called each other and held hands. Neither one wanted to be alone. In the morning, Adana went to see Ezekwesili. She walked slowly through the town. People watched her walk like they watched a play. Some gave her quiet looks of pity. Some could not hide the small fear at the edge of their faces. If a ghost walked among them, they wanted to know. Ezekwesili's house sat under a shade tree. He was sitting outside on a wooden bench, staring at a small radio that made no sound. He looked older than the picture had shown. There was a softness in his hands that made his fingers look like broken roots. When Adana stepped close, he looked up and smiled, the small tired smile of a man who had learned to keep some feelings locked away. "Adana," he said, "I am sorry for this time." He sounded like a man who had said this at many graves. "I am sorry." She could feel her lips shake when she spoke. "Uncle," she said. She used the name because it had always been his. "Obinna came to me last night." Ezekwesili's face moved in a way that was almost not human. A quick twitch at his mouth. He looked at her like a man who had been called out of a safe place and into light. He held his breath for a long second. "That is impossible," he said. His voice folded into a small laugh, but the laugh did not reach his eyes. He folded his hands and looked at them. "I was at the village. Many people saw me. I could not." Adana did not let him finish. Her voice was hard now. "He pointed to your picture," she said. "He pointed to you." Ezekwesili's eyes closed for a second. When he opened them again, there was something like fear in them. He stood up slowly and put his hand on the bench for support. "I loved Obinna like a son," he said. "I taught him. I defended him. I would never." "Would you?" Adana cut him off. The words came out like stones. "Would you really not? Why did you watch him all the time at the wedding? Why did you look like a man who had a secret?" Ezekwesili's hands shook. He looked at the ground and then at the sky. He seemed to be fighting a war inside himself. For a moment Adana saw a boy under his skin. The boy who had once tied Obinna's shoes and told him stories. Then the boy was gone. "People watch for many reasons," Ezekwesili said quietly. "Sometimes we watch because we love. Sometimes because we are afraid. Sometimes because we think we know best. His voice was small. He looked like he had been found out, but he did not say the thing Adana wanted to hear. She could feel anger like a new fire in her chest. She wanted to shout and throw stones. Instead, she held the coral bead and tried to breathe. "If you lied," she said, "then I will know. Obinna will not leave this alone." Ezekwesili looked at her then with real eyes. "You should not speak like that," he said. "You have suffered enough. Let the law do its work. Let the elders sit. Let the police look. You are young and your grief is loud. Give it time." Adana wanted to believe him. She wanted the world to be simple and fair. She wanted to sit down and wait for men in coats to solve everything. But the image of Obinna pointing at Ezekwesili would not leave her mind. It had been a clear finger, full of command. It felt like a truth that could not be erased. She said, "I will watch. I will ask. I will find out." The words came out like a promise. "I will not let him rest until I know." Ezekwesili's face looked like a man who had been hit, not by a fist but by a thought. He reached for her hand and did not take it back. "Adana," he said softly, "be careful. There are things you do not know." She left his house with his warning sitting in her ears. The town felt different now. Every face seemed to hold a secret. The photo on the wall in her house watched her like a judge. She would not sleep that night either. Her vow had made something wake. She had asked the dead not to sleep. Now she had to listen to the noise she had brought on herself. When the sky grew dark, the wind came again. The lamp shook. In the corner of the room a small shadow moved. Adana held her breath. Something had started. She did not know if it was mercy or danger that had come with it. She only knew that she would not turn away. She would follow where it led, even if it led to a place darker than she could imagine. The morning was hot and bright. The sun pressed on the roofs like a heavy hand. People moved slowly because the heat made them lazy. Adana walked fast. Her feet felt heavy, but her mind moved faster than her legs. She wanted answers. She wanted to break the quiet that had settled over the town. She went straight to Ezekwesili's little shop. He sat behind a counter stacked with small boxes and knew the number of every nail. He looked older now. Wrinkles cut his face in lines like old maps. When he saw Adana, his eyes did not light up. Something heavy lived there. "Uncle," Adana said, and the word was gentle but firm. "I need to ask you more. About Obinna." Ezekwesili put down the cup he had been holding. His hand was a little shaky. "Adana, child, sit," he said. His voice tried to be soft like a blanket, but it trembled. "You must not push yourself. You are weak." "I am not weak," she said. "I am tired, yes, but I am not weak. Obinna came to me. He pointed at you. He wanted me to look." Ezekwesili's face went still. He blinked like a man waking from a bad dream. "He did not." He stopped. His mouth moved but no sound came out. He rubbed his face with the back of his hand. "Did you know anything about poison?" Adana asked. The question dropped into the small shop like a stone. For a moment no bird sang outside. A woman at a neighbor's stall looked up and then looked away. Ezekwesili sighed. He looked at the wooden floor as if it was a mirror that would show him who he was. "I knew there were talks," he said slowly. "People talk, Adana. Men who are greedy talk. They meet in small rooms and find reasons to fear things. They talked about land, about business, about who would control the name. But I never thought it would go this far." Adana's eyes burned. "They talked? Who talked? What did they say? Why would someone want Obinna gone?" Ezekwesili closed his eyes and breathed out like he was letting out a secret. Some family members feared Obinna would not bend. They thought he would change everything. He had ideas that would make him boss, and some wanted the boss for themselves. I listened. I heard names. I heard plans. But I told myself it was talk. I told myself it would stop. Adana felt her heart pound. Who said these things?" Ezekwesili's face sank. He looked small. "Obiora. Ezekwu. A few from the market. Maybe even someone close. They said Obinna must stay single. They said when he married, he might not listen to the family. They said many things. I am sorry, child. I am sorry I did not stop them. Adana swallowed tight. You knew there were talks about stopping Obina from marrying? You knew people wanted to stop him? Why did you not tell him? Why did you not tell me? Ezekwesili put his head in his hands like a man who wanted to hide from his own shame. I thought I could fix it inside my head. I thought I could steer them. I told myself their words were angry noise that would go away. I told myself I knew better. I was wrong. His voice broke. The quiet shop felt like a room closing in. Adana's anger rose like a tide. You loved him like a son. You taught him. You said that yourself. Then why did you let them talk about him like that? Why did you let words become plans? Ezekwesili looked at her. He saw pain in her face, and it was like a mirror that hurt him. Because sometimes love is fear hiding as care. I feared change. I feared losing a place of comfort. I feared being wrong. I joined their whispers not to kill, child. I joined to calm them, to listen so I could say the right thing. But I was weak. Names, Adana said. Give me names. Ezekwesili opened his mouth like he might spill all the names at once. Then he closed it again. For a long while no one spoke. Dust moved in the sunlight. Finally he whispered, Obiora, Ezekwu. A small group met under the old palm after market days. They shared beer and plans. They were angry about Obina's ideas. I heard them say the words no wife and no marriage more than once. I heard a man say we must stop him in a voice that was not a joke. They thought they were clever. They thought threats would scare him. Adana felt cold despite the heat. Did anyone talk about poison? Ezekwesili's face changed like a cloud. Not in clear words. But one night I heard the word soon, and a smile that felt like the sound of a lock. I did not listen hard. I did not want to. I was ashamed to hear such words and then look away. I keep a shop, Adana. I keep things safe. But I did not keep him safe. Adana pressed her hands to her knees so they would not shake. You knew something, and you did not stop it. You let them seed fear. You told me earlier you knew nothing. Why did you hide this? Ezekwesili's eyes filled with tears. They slid down his face and landed on his hands. Because I was afraid of making a bigger fight. Because I loved him and thought I could calm this without storm. Because I was a man who wished to be peaceful and failed. His voice cracked and fell away. Adana could see the man breaking. She did not feel pity. She felt a new kind of anger that hurt her like a bruise. You were watching him at the wedding, she said. You watched like a man who had a secret. You smiled but your hands did not clap right. Why? Ezekwesili looked at the small window and then back at Adana. I watched him because he was my heart. I watched because I knew that if he married, things would change. I watched because I thought the change could hurt us. I did not have courage to face what might happen. I am sorry. The shop seemed to hold its breath. Adana wanted to shout, to shake him, to make the words bring Obina back. Instead she felt something colder. She felt a feeling like thunder rolling in the distance. Her throat closed tight. At that moment, the air in the room shifted. A small sound, like a dry leaf rubbing a table, came from behind them. Ezekwesili's body stiffened. He looked toward the corner where an old sketch of Obina stood. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something and could not. Adana turned. The room felt different. The sun looked dimmer even though the day was bright. Her skin prickled. Obina was there. Not whole. Not right for the world of the living. But he was there. The color was gone from his face, and his clothes hung like a shell around him. His eyes looked like coals under ash. He did not step forward. He did not make a sound. He only looked at Ezekwesili. Ezekwesili's face went pale. He clutched the edge of the counter like a man holding onto a cliff. His legs shook. No, he breathed. His voice was small. No, no, no. Obina pointed. He did not point at Ezekwesili in the photo now. He pointed at Ezekwesili himself. His finger was steady and sure. Cut the air like a blade. Ezekwesili's face crumpled. He tried to speak and then a noise escaped him that sounded like a cry and a laugh mixed. He slid down from his stool and fell onto the wooden floor. For a second he lay very still. Adana reached out but stopped. Her hand hovered above him like a question. Ezekwesili did not move. His chest did not rise. For a long minute, Adana thought he had died. She called his name and pushed a little harder. He groaned and then his body went limp again. Neighbors came running after they heard the sudden cry. The shop filled with faces. People bent and looked like they wanted to see into a deep well. Someone put a cloth under Ezekwesili's head. Someone else fanned his face. Adana stood and watched the scene move like slow water. After a time, Ezekwesili woke. His eyes were wide and not right. He looked at Adana as if he had been somewhere dangerous and then come back with something in his hands that weighed him down. He tried to get up and then fell back. "Please," he said in a voice torn small. "Please help me." He touched me. He looked like that. He said. Ezekwesili could not finish. His breaths came in quick small bursts. He looked terrified like a child who had seen something too big. Adana knelt beside him. Her hands shook but she held him. "What did he say?" she asked. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. People leaned in to hear. Ezekwesili's face twisted like a man turning a key. He said, "You watched. You let them speak. You will see what it costs to keep quiet." He said it with the voice that used to be warm and now was cold. I felt my blood go away. He closed his eyes. "I am sick. I am sorry. I did not kill him. I only listened. Please believe me." Adana looked at the faces around her. Some were kind. Some were fearful. Some watched like wolves. Ezekwesili's confession had been heavy in the air, but the arrival of Obinna had taken it somewhere else. It was no longer about words. It was about punishment, about a hand that had touched a guilty man and left him broken. Adana felt a deep fear settle into her bones. Obinna was not only showing the truth. He was making them feel it. She had asked the dead not to sleep. She had asked for justice. The man who had once made jokes and fixed generators was now a force that could reach into people's hearts. Ezekwesili was carried inside by two neighbors who said he needed to rest. They closed the shop door softly. Adana stood and watched the dust settle. She touched the coral bead in her pocket and felt it press cold into her skin. She had more questions now than before. Ezekwesili had confessed to hearing the plans. But he said he did not know who poured the poison. He said he had tried to calm the men. He said he was sorry. But when Obinna pointed at him, he fell like a man with a stone tied to his feet. Adana felt a new thing now, a careful fear. Obinna was doing what she asked. He was waking things that were sleeping. He did not only shine light, he burned. She did not like what she had called for. The edge of her vow felt sharp in her mouth. She walked away from the shop and down the road where the market noise returned slowly. People went back to business, but they did not talk like before. They moved like people who had just had a bad dream. Adana walked past them and felt their eyes like quiet hands on her back. At the house that night, she did not sleep. She sat by the window and watched the road again. She thought of Ezekwesili's words and the man he had become. She thought of Obinna's face, pale and steady. The two images mixed in her head like oil and water. She had asked the dead to find the wicked. The dead had begun. Now she watched, and the world around her tightened like a drum that someone else began to beat. She did not know what would happen next. She only knew that she had started something that could not be put back in a box. She pressed the coral bead to her lips and tasted fear like iron. The town felt tighter now, like a pot with a lid pushed down. People kept their voices low. Ice followed Adana in the market. When she walked past, men stopped talking. Women pulled their cloths tighter. The air tasted sharp, like when rain is coming. Adana did not leave the house much. But she had to go see people. She had to ask questions. She had to listen for the truth. Word came quickly that Obiora had been seen at the palm trees by the market. He drank all day and slept under the shade. He liked to say brave things in front of others. He liked to pretend he was not scared of anything. Adana found him later than she wanted. He sat on a bench and rolled a bead between his fingers like he was playing with a knife. He looked at her when she came close, and his smile was small and sharp. "Adana," he said. like a man who had practiced the wrong words. What do you want? You, she said. You are one of the men Uncle said talked about Obina. You were loud. You laughed. Why? Obiora shrugged. I talked. So what? Men talk. We drink. We complain. That does not mean we kill. You were jealous, Adana said. I saw you at the wedding. You did not clap for him like others. You laughed with a different sound. Obiora's face changed. The laugh left his mouth like a mask. Jealous? Of Obina? He said the name like someone tasting it for the first time. Child, you do not understand. He had everything. He would change the market. He would make rules. People like me would lose out. I said things, yes. I said we should keep things the same. I did not mean. You did not mean? Adana cut him off. You sat with men and planned. Names were said. Ideas were given. Someone took a step. Someone poured poison. You were there. You know voices better than anyone. Obiora leaned back and looked at the sky like a man wanting to fly away. He rubbed his thumb hard over the bead he held. We talked, yes. We cursed and we shouted. We said foolish things. Maybe a few said that marriage would ruin us. But murder? No. Who would do such a thing? His eyes darted to the road and then back to Adana. He sounded both afraid and angry. Adana felt the anger boil hot. Then tell me who talked about making him stop. Tell me who spoke of no wife and soon and we must do something. Who actually said it like a plan? Obiora kept his mouth shut for a long time. He looked like a man learning to walk on a tightrope. At last he sighed and stood up. There was a meeting, he said. A small one. Not many. Ezeku. A man from the market called Madhu. A few others. We drank. We cursed. We got loud. But one night. He stopped and swallowed. But one night. Adana asked. She wanted the next words like a thirsty person wants water. Obiora's face looked small in the bright sun. He pushed his hand into his pocket. One night, a woman joined us, he said. She came when the beer was finished and the moon was low. She was quiet. She did not laugh. She listened. She looked like someone who had something to lose. She said short words. She said, if he must go, I can do it. Adana felt a cold drop run down her back. Her mouth went dry. A woman? She said. Who was she? Obiora shrugged like he wanted to hide. I cannot be sure. She covered her face with a scarf. But I remember her hands. They were small. They trembled. She said she could go inside, that she had a way. She said she could make it look like sickness. We laughed and we drank and then the talk stopped. He looked at Adana then like he was begging her to stop. I did not think she would do it. I did not think she would use poison. Adana's head spun. A woman. Someone connected. Her mind moved fast and then stuck. She thought of Chisholm. Her own sister. She saw her face in the place of the unknown woman's. She wanted to push the thought away. It hurt. Why would a woman do such a thing? Adana asked. Why would she say that? Obiora's eyes were full of a new kind of sadness. Maybe she wanted him for herself. Maybe she was told lies. Maybe she was pushed to it. Women carry hard things. They break in ways we cannot see. She said if he married, she would lose her place. If he married, the house would change. She said she could not let that happen. I thought she was speaking in anger. He looked at Adana and his voice grew small. I am sorry. Adana sat down hard on the bench. The wood made a sound like a shame. The market noise swelled around them, but it felt like it was far away. Her mind kept going back to the small hands that trembled. Who had hands like that? Who had a heart small enough to let poison live inside? Her throat burned. If she said she could go inside, Adana said slowly, then she was close enough to the food. She knew the family. She knew when to move. She could do it in the rush of the wedding. She looked at Obiora hard. Who was she? Tell me. Obiora swallowed. He looked at the road like it had the answer written on it. I was not close to her, he said. I only remember the scarf and the way she spoke. She talked of loss like she had lost something already. I thought at the time it was the house she feared. But now, he broke off. Adana pressed her palms to her face. Her fingers felt the heat behind her skin. "Give me names," she whispered. "If you cannot give the woman's name, then tell me who else was there. Tell me everything." Obiora leaned forward, like he was lowering himself into a secret. Ezeku was loud. He spoke of business. He wanted control. Madhu wanted the market stalls. A few others wanted that. But the woman, she was quiet. She only spoke when the moon was high. She said she had a way to make a man sleep forever. She said she would do it and the family would thank her. I laughed then. I laughed like a fool. He shook his head hard. I was a fool. Adana felt a dull anger twist in her stomach. You heard all of this and you did nothing. You came to the wedding and watched him drink. You smiled. Why? Obiora's face crumpled. He looked tired and small. We thought talk would stay talk. We thought the world would keep moving. We thought we were safe. He pushed his hand through his hair. I did not pour it. I did not hold the cup. But I sat with them. I am part of it. The sound of someone calling a name nearby cut through the talk. People passed with baskets. A child ran by and tripped, and a woman bent quickly to help him up. Life kept moving. The market did not stop for grief or ghosts. Adana rose. Her knees felt like they belonged to someone else. You will tell them, she said to Obiora. You will tell the elders. You will tell the priest. You will say what you heard. If you do not, I will speak of you. Obiora looked at her like a man who had been given both a gift and a punishment. I will tell them, he said. His voice was small and bare. I cannot sleep, cannot eat. I will tell them. Before he could move, the air in the market changed. It went quiet like a page turned. The people around them stopped and looked toward the old well. Heads turned slowly. The sound of a child crying far away came to them like a bell. Obina stood not far from the well. He had that same pale look. He was not alone, but he did not need company. He did not smile. He pointed again. This time he pointed at the road where Chisholm often walked, where wives went to fetch water. He pointed with that slow, dead surety. Obiora's face lost color. He tried to step back, but his feet seemed to touch the ground like roots. He started to shake. No, he said. No, no. People gathered. They watched like they watched a play where the actors had not practiced. Adana could feel the blood in her neck. Her heart beat loud and heavy. She wanted to push the ghost away. She wanted to protect her sister. She wanted to deny everything and pretend that the world had not changed. Chisholm was a small woman with a soft voice. She worked at the market sometimes, selling Gary and tomatoes. She was not a woman who looked like danger. But in the crowd, she turned and saw the pointing finger. Her hands flew to her mouth. She stumbled backward and then forward and then she ran. Obiora broke free of his roots and followed. The market filled with noise then. The sound of a man running, people shouting, the slap of feet on hard ground. Adana pushed through the crowd. Her breath came quick and hot. She saw Chisholm lean against the wall of a house, hands on her knees, breathing hard. Her face had gone white as chalk. Chisholm! Adana cried. She grabbed her sister's shoulders and shook her gently. What happened? Tell me the truth. Chisholm looked at Adana with eyes wide and wet. She started. Her voice cracked. I did not mean for him to die. Adana's body tightened. The words she feared slipped into the air and into her ears. Chisholm's hands trembled and she looked like a broken bird. The market noise rang and the sun felt too bright. Adana held her sister and did not let go. She had gone looking for truth, and the truth had run and hit her like a stone. She had wanted justice, and justice had come like a hurt that could not be swallowed. Obina watched them all. His eyes were steady and cold. He had started something that could not be put back. Adana realized she had to know more, but for now the web had widened. The threads reached out and touched the people she loved. She pressed the coral bead in her pocket so hard it hurt. The town swirled around them like a storm that had no name. The town hummed like a tired bee. People spoke in small voices. The news had moved fast. A woman might have helped kill Obina. Adana felt the town press on her from every side. Men stared. Children whispered. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Adana walked to the house with Chisholm at her side. Chisholm's steps were quick and short, like someone trying to outrun a shadow. She kept her head down. Her hands folded tight in front of her like she was holding something fragile. When they reached the gate, Adana saw Ezekwesili sitting on the porch. His face looked pinched, like a man who had sat in the sun too long. "How is he?" Adana asked before she could stop herself. She meant Ezekwesili, but the name came out like the one she could not say. Ezekwesili rubbed his hands together. "I am tired," he said. He looked at Chisholm then, and his eyes went away from her like he was trying to hide a hurt. "He sleeps often. He cannot eat." Adana felt a hard thing in her chest. She barely breathed. "We have to know," she whispered. "If Chisholm did this, we must tell the elders. We must stop more wrong." Chisholm's lips moved but no sound came. She looked as if someone had cut her into pieces and only one piece could move. She did not speak. Adana sat and pulled her sister down beside her. "Tell me what happened," she said softly. Her voice was small but sharp. "Tell me everything. I want to hear it from you." Chisholm's eyes filled and then emptied. She blinked and tried to find the words like coins at the bottom of a jar. "I loved him," she said at last. The words came like a tiny cough. "I loved Obinna before you. I loved him like a slow fire. I thought if he married someone else I would lose him. I thought I would lose everything." Adana felt the world tilt. She pressed her palms to her knees to hold the tilt. "Why did you not tell me?" she asked. "Why did you hide it?" Chisholm's voice shook. "I was ashamed. I thought if I begged he would laugh. I thought if I cried he would not see. Ezekwesili told me things. He told me the family would fall. He told me it would be better if Obinna did not have a wife. He said we could protect the family. He said he would help. He said I could keep a place in their hearts if I did this." Adana's hands tightened. "He said that." Her words were a low thud. "Ezekwesili told you to do this?" Chisholm looked down at her palms. "He did not tell me to kill," she said fast. "He said the family would be safer. He said we would find a way. He told me words that made my head go soft. He said, 'You love him. You can stop him. Do it quietly. No one must know.' I thought he meant only to scare. I thought it was talk. I did not think he would teach me how." Adana felt hot and cold at once. She remembered Ezekwesili's face the day before. The man had seemed scared, then sorry. Now, hearing Chisholm, Adana could see lines of the truth start to show. "How did you do it?" she asked now. Her voice was hard, like a small stone. Chisholm swallowed like she was trying to push the words down. "At the wedding," she said. "People were busy. Plates passed. I went to the drinks table. I kept my hands small and steady. A woman from the plan gave me a small bottle. She told me to put it in his cup when he was not looking. She said no one would see. I showed my hands and they shook, but she held my fingers and showed me how." She looked up then, and her eyes were full of something that made Adana sick. "I did it. I put it in his cup. I thought he would sleep and wake. I thought I could take him away and hide and then tell him I loved him. I did not mean to kill." Adana's heart pounded so hard it made her ears hurt. The pieces of the day when Obinna fell returned like flashes. The cup, the face, the empty room. Her mouth moved but no sound came. "Who gave you the bottle?" she asked, and the small question felt like thunder. Chisholm looked away. Her fingers twisted. "She wore a scarf," she said. "She said she was from the market. I did not see her face. She said she had no name I could use. She said it was a one-time thing. She said she would stay away after. She promised me she would make it clean." Adana imagined a woman in the dark with hands like Chisholm's. She imagined the bottle and its quiet. She imagined a smile that was not a smile. The town around them seemed to stop breathing. Ezekwesili stood up slow. His voice came out like straw. "I did not mean for any of this," he said. The words fell into the quiet yard. "I told Chisholm things. I told her the family would break. I said we had to find another way. I thought with words and talk we could fix it. I did not know a hand would go further. I am sorry. Adana looked at him with new eyes. The man who had helped her fix the roof was now a man with a part in a hurt so deep it might not heal. You whispered to us like the wind, she said. You told us fear. Fear turned to plans. Plans turned to poison. Why did you not tell Obina? Why did you not stop them for real? Ezekwesili's face sank. I thought my words could do it without storms. I thought I could steer. I failed. He bowed his head and a small sound came from his chest like a child crying. I failed you. I failed him. Adana felt anger like a knife. She wanted to hit and shout and make him feel the empty where Obina had been. Instead she pressed her fingers to her mouth and breathed hard. We will tell the elders, she said. We will tell the chief. We will tell the priest. This cannot stay hidden. Ezekwesili closed his eyes. He looked like a man who had been stopped in the middle of a long run. If you do that, he said, they will turn on you. They will turn on Chisholm. They will say worse. They will say you made her do it. They will find reasons to strike back. Adana leaned forward. Her voice dropped so low it was almost a whisper. Let them say what they will, she said. We will not let a secret live again. Obina is gone because people chose fear over love. We will not hide that. At that moment, a sound came from the doorway. Everyone turned. It was the sound of slow steps on the dirt road. Not the quick steps of a child. Not the steady steps of a working man. These steps came like one person marching to say something final. Obina stood at the gate. He looked pale and full of a strange light. Men fell back. Women covered their mouths. Chisholm fell to her knees and put her hands over her face like she could stop the world from seeing her. Ezekwesili sobbed and then tried to speak and could not. Obina did not look to Chisholm. He looked first at Ezekwesili. He pointed with the same sure finger he had used before. This time he pointed to the wooden chest that sat under Ezekwesili's bed. The chest had been there for years. It held old papers and tools and things a man might keep when he kept secrets. Adana felt her stomach drop. She walked past the house and into the small room where the chest was. Her palms were wet. She held them tight so they would not shake. She lifted the lid with a noise that sounded too loud in the quiet room. Inside were papers, old letters, a small cloth, and at the very bottom a tiny glass bottle wrapped in oilcloth. The bottle was no bigger than a thumb. Adana's fingers trembled as she unwrapped it. The glass held a thin brown liquid that looked like old tea. She smelled it and the scent was bitter and sharp in the back of her throat. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped it. She put the bottle on the table and opened one of the letters. The paper had a few words torn away, but Adana could see part of a line that made her legs go weak. The note read, Chisholm must do it. The room spun. The words were plain and small as a stone. They said what the ghost had pointed to and what Chisholm had confessed. Ezekwesili fell to his knees and covered his face. No, he said. No, I did not put it there. I know who wrote that note. I thought I was covering things for you. I thought I was keeping us from storms. I thought if this was hidden, then no one would go wild. I never thought. We found it, Adana said. Her voice was a hard edge. She held the bottle in her hand now like proof of a hurt you can show. We have the bottle. We have the note. Chisholm looked like she would die. Her hands went to her mouth and she sobbed in a way that made her body shake. I am sorry, she said again and again. Neighbors had come now. A few stood at the gate. Some whispered. Others stared. The house that had once hummed with small life now felt like a stage where a terrible truth had been shown. Adana walked out and held the bottle up so the people could see. The sunlight hit the glass and the liquid inside looked dark and loud. This came from Ezekwesili's chest, she said. Her voice did not shake. This has Chisholm's name on a note. Tell the elders. Tell the priest. Let them see. Ezekwesili's shoulders went down as if a weight had been put there by hands. He did not fight. He bowed his head. For the first time, his old strength seemed to have gone away. The news moved faster than wind. The elders came. The priest came. People gathered until the yard was full. They whispered and they pointed and they called for justice. Chisholm stood like a woman who had been cut open and left to heal in front of everyone. Adana held the coral bead in her pocket and felt it press at her side. She had asked the dead to wake. The dead had not only pointed. They had pulled secrets from chests and put them into the sun. People would be angry and sad and scared. The house had become a place where old things were being pulled out and shown to the light. As the elders spoke and the priests spoke and the crowd cried out, Adana watched Chisholm. Her sister's face had changed. It was not the same small face. It had lines of hard sorrow and small, raw light. Adana wanted to rage at her, to shake her until she told everything, to make the hurt stop. Instead she felt a different thing. A soft, terrible pity. She wanted to hold Chisholm and break apart and put the pieces back together so none of them would hurt again. But there could be no fixing like that. People needed answers. People needed a way to feel safe again. The elders decided to hold a meeting that night. The town would listen and the priest would say prayers. They would decide what to do with Chisholm. They would decide what to do with Ezekwesili. They would decide what to do with the family that had split like a fallen stick. As the crowd thinned and the sun moved away, Adana stood and looked at the house. The chest lay open in the small room like a wound. The town felt different, like a street after a storm. She had wanted justice. Justice had come, but it had torn more than just wrong. It had torn a family where she had thought love sat. She touched the coral bead in her pocket and felt its cool. Obinna had pointed, and the house had given up its secret. Now the town would watch and judge. The night would bring elders and prayers and a slow, heavy decision. Adana did not know what it would be. She only knew that things were now open, like a sore in the sun, and everyone could see. Everyone said the town would quiet down after the elders met. But the town did not quiet. It hummed like a beehive about to burst. People moved in groups and spoke in quick whispers. Some walked past Adana's house and stared. Others pretended not to look. The moon that night was thin and cold. Inside the house, Chisholm sat on the floor with her legs folded. Her hands were clasped so tight the knuckles were white. She kept saying sorry under her breath like a broken song. Adana sat near her and watched. She had said the truth out loud. The bottle had been shown. The elders had spoken. Now the town had to decide what to do. Ezekwesili sat on a small stool across the room. He kept rubbing his face with the heel of his hand. Sometimes he would look at Chisholm and then away, like a man who saw a cliff and could not climb down. He had the look of someone who had lost his place in the sun. The elders arrived with their heavy steps. They wore old cloth and had faces carved by long years. The priest came too with his voice that could make people quiet. The room grew heavy when they sat. The neighbors pressed to the doorway to hear. No one wanted to miss any part of what would be said. The old chief spoke first. His voice was slow but steady. "We have listened," he said. "This is a hard thing. It breaks the home. It stains the family. We must do what is right." "Right?" the priest said after him. His hands were folded. "Confession is good. But confession must be followed by truth and consequence. We are a people who hold one another. We do not let such sin sleep." Chisholm looked like a child at the edge of a river. "I did it," she said, but the words were small. They broke off like pebbles. "I put the thing in his cup. I thought he would sleep and wake. I did not know he would die. I loved him. I am sorry." A woman in the crowd cried loud enough that everyone heard. The elders spoke about law and tradition and what must be done. They said Chisholm must stand before the town. They said she must answer every question. They said the family must decide whether to forgive. Adana's heart beat hard. She wanted to scream and to kneel and to pull Chisholm into her arms and hold her until everything stopped hurting. Instead she listened to the elders and let them say their words. The law was a slow thing. It moved like the tide. One of the elders, a sharp-faced man named Nebuike, asked Chisholm to speak more. He wanted to know why she did it. He wanted the story to be clear, like water in a cup. Chisholm's voice trembled. "I was lonely," she said. The word came out like a dry leaf. "I loved him before. I thought if I could make him mine he would look at me. He would be with me. Uncle told me words. He told me the family would fall. He said I could help. He said I would be safe. Ezekwesili's head bowed. He did not try to say anything. Tears ran down his cheeks and left marks on his chin. He looked thin. Nebuike looked at him hard. You told her? He asked. The man's voice cut the room like wind through dry grass. Ezekwesili nodded slowly. I told her to be careful, he said. I told her to keep the house. I told her to listen. I told her words I now regret. I did not mean for this to happen. I told you it would be better to stop the marriage, Chisholm whispered, looking up at Ezekwesili for the first time. You said you could make them listen. You said you would guide me. You gave me the bottle. You wrapped it in cloth. You told me where to put it. The room turned sharper. People gasped and held their breath. Ezekwesili's face went as white as the moon. No, he said. No, I did not. He tried to stand, but his legs wobbled. He sank back down. The priest stood up and walked to Ezekwesili. He placed a hand on the old man's shoulder. Speak, he said quietly. Tell the truth before God. Ezekwesili's voice was broken. I thought I could stop them with small waves, not a storm, he said. I gave Chisholm words. I gave her hope of keeping a place. I thought I was protecting the family from change. I wrapped the bottle for her to carry, not to use. I told her to be brave. I was wrong. I was a fool. Chisholm fell forward and sobbed into her hands. Her body shook with each bite of breath. I thought I could fix it, she cried. I thought love could be taken back. I thought if I could remove him from their sight, he would see me later and we would run away. I was stupid. I was wrong. An old woman in the crowd lifted her hand and slapped it across the air like she wanted to catch a fly. You have broken a life, she said. Her voice was hard. You have broken a family. You must pay. Pay how? Someone shouted from the back. People argued and shouted and the room filled with noise. The elders asked for calm. The priest raised his hands and the voices dropped like feathers. The elders decided Chisholm must be taken to the chief's place at dawn. She would face more questions there. They said she must not leave the town. They said she must stay near the house and be watched. The people in the crowd nodded. Some looked satisfied. Some looked sad. When the elders left, the quiet in the house felt like a heavy blanket. The neighbors went home slowly. The moon watched over the yard with cold eyes. Adana stayed awake all night, not sleeping, not moving much, her mind like a river of knives. Around midnight, the house door creaked. Adana sat up so fast she cut her palm on a chair. She pushed herself to her feet and saw a shadow by the doorway. It was small and thin and moved like a child. Who is there? She called. Her voice shook. Chisholm dragged herself toward the light. Her face was pale and wet. She looked at Adana with eyes that had lost color. I cannot stay, she said. I cannot hold it. I will not be watched like a rat. I want to run and hide and then die. Adana grabbed her sister's hand. You cannot leave, she said. The elders said you must stay. You must answer for what you did. Chisholm pulled away and shook her head. They will beat me, she said. Her voice was small. They will pile shame on me. I will not live like that. I cannot. Adana felt something cold and hard slide down her back like a blade. She wanted to pull Chisholm into her arms and hold her until she stopped shaking. Instead, she tightened her grip and looked at her sister with a hard face. You must be brave, she said. You must face this. You must tell everything. Chisholm's mouth opened and closed like a little animal. Then she ran. She did not knock things over. She moved like a ghost through the yard and into the dark. Adana ran after her, heart pounding so loud it felt like thunder in her chest. The street was empty. The market closed. The moon lit the path like a pale coin. Chisholm ran to the river road, the place where the bush grew thick and the path led away from the town. Adana shouted for her to stop, but the night swallowed the sound. Chisholm, stop! Adana cried. Her breath burned. Her legs moved like they were not hers. She grabbed her sister's hand and pulled. Chisholm turned, eyes full of fear and hate and shame. I cannot, she said. I cannot face their eyes. Adana held on to her and said, You must not run. You must not hide. You must not give them the victory. Her voice was raw. We will face this together. They stood near the bush and the sound of water far away. Chisholm's breath came sharp and quick. He came, she said suddenly. Obina. He was there by the palm trees yesterday. He looked at me like he knew. I could not bear it. Adana felt the world tilt. He pointed at you? She asked. Chisholm nodded slowly, and the tears fell like small stones. I knew, she said. I knew he would come. I thought maybe he would forgive me. I thought maybe he would see that I loved him. But when he looked, he did not feel like mercy. He felt like the end. Adana pulled her sister close. The bush around them whispered as if it had ears. You must come back, she said. We will face them. We will not let the town tear you to pieces. Chisholm leaned into her like a child leaning on a mother. For a moment, they stood there and only the breath between them moved. Then a sound came from the dark. A footstep. Slow. Heavy. Not near, but not far. The footstep made the hair on Adana's arms stand up. Obina stepped from the darkness. He walked like someone who had a path to follow and would follow it no matter the pain. His face was the same pale face, his eyes like soft coals. He did not speak. He pointed at Chisholm with the same steady finger. Chisholm cried out and fell to her knees. Please, she said. Please. I will tell all. I will do anything. Just do not. Obina did not look at her. He looked past her, like seeing through the town to the place where truth lived. Then he reached out and touched Chisholm's forehead with a cold finger. The touch was small, but it burned in a way that cut deeper than any knife. Chisholm's body sagged. Her face changed. The world around them tilted slow. She looked like someone asleep but trapped between sleep and wake. Her legs folded under her and she slid to the ground. Adana screamed and fell beside her. She pressed her hand to Chisholm's heart and felt it slow like the last drops in a leaky pot. Wake up, she shouted. Wake up. Chisholm did not wake. Her breath came shallow and then quiet. Adana shook her and grabbed her shoulder and called her name. People came running from nearby houses. They gathered and looked like scattered birds. Ezekwesili, who had followed them, fell to his knees and began to pray loud and wild. Chisholm's eyes were closed like she slept. Her face had a blank look. She looked like someone who had been left in the dark with no one to find her. The elders and the priest bent and tried to help. They fanned her face. They poured cool water on her cheeks. Her skin did not brighten. Someone shouted that she should be taken to the healer. The healer came and looked like a small, grim man who had seen too many things. He checked Chisholm and then he looked up and shook his head. She is in a deep sleep, he said. Not like death. Not like life. Like something put her there. Adana curled around her sister on the ground and rocked. Her tears wet Chisholm's hair. People circled and whispered. Obina stood at the edge of the ring like a judge watching a trial. His face was calm. He had done what Adana had asked. A life had been stopped and another had fallen into a strange sleep. Ezekwesili wept with his face to the dirt. Forgive me, he wailed. Forgive me. I did not mean. His voice shook the ground. Adana pressed her forehead to Chisholm's hand and whispered, I will find the truth. I will not stop. I will not close my eyes. For the first time since Obina died, she felt something like fear and a new thing called resolve that sat heavy and hot in her chest. The town had seen a woman fall into sleep. It had seen confession. It had seen the hand that touched her. Justice had a new sound now. It did not feel clean or right. It felt like a blade that cut both the guilty and the kind. They carried Chisholm inside by moonlight. People watched in silence. Adana stayed with her, touching her hand, and praying in small words. Outside, Obina looked at the house and then turned and faded into the night like smoke. The moon watched, thin and cold. Adana did not sleep. She sat with Chisholm and watched the slow rise and fall of her chest. She had wanted justice. She had wanted Obina to find the wicked. But in that moment she also wanted mercy. She wanted the world to make a different choice. She wanted to hold both things in her hands and make them whole again. Fall into sleep. It had seen confession. It had seen the hand that touched her. Justice had a new sound now. It did not feel clean or right. It felt like a blade that cut both the guilty and the kind. They carried Chisholm inside by moonlight. People watched in silence. Adana stayed with her, touching her hand, and praying in small words. Outside, Obinna looked at the house and then turned and faded into the night like smoke. The moon watched, thin and cold. Adana did not sleep. She sat with Chisholm and watched the slow rise and fall of her chest. She had wanted justice. She had wanted Obinna to find the wicked. But in that moment she also wanted mercy. She wanted the world to make a different choice. She wanted to hold both things in her hands and make them whole again. Days moved like slow drums. The town had not found peace. People still whispered when Adana passed. Some looked at her with pity. Some looked with fear. Some looked with anger. No one came to her house for gossip anymore. They came to watch to see what would happen next. Chisholm slept on a narrow bed. She breathed small and slow. The healer had come and touched her brow and frowned. He said he could not fix what the dead had done. He shook his head and left a bowl of herbs outside the door. Adana sat by the bed and watched her sister. She did not know if Chisholm would wake or sleep forever. Each breath Chisholm took was a small hard prize that Adana held like a fragile thing. News moved fast. Obiora told the elders everything he had heard about the meetings under the palm trees. Men who had laughed in the market now kept quiet. Some left the town in the next days. They went to find work far away. Some stayed and begged forgiveness. Ezekwu, Madu, and a few others admitted they had talked and they had planned. They said they were sorry. Some people said sorry softly and kept their eyes down. Some said sorry loudly and still looked like they wanted to fight. Ezekwesili sat on the porch most of the day. He no longer fixed nails or counted boxes. He watched people pass like a man who had finished his work and had nothing left. Sometimes he stood and called to men who passed, asking them if they were hungry. They nodded and walked on. He did not notice many things anymore. Adana moved like a woman with a small stone in her pocket she dared not throw. She spoke to the priest and the elders. She told them what Obinna had shown her, what Chisholm had said, and the bottle and the note they had found. The elders spoke and said words about law and mercy. The priest came and prayed and said they must forgive when they could, but also make sure a wrong like that did not happen again. People will say many things, the priest told Adana one evening. He had a soft voice that made her feel small and safe for a little while. You have done what you could. You have shown truth. Now you must let God and the elders do the rest. Adana wanted to shout at him. She wanted to say that God had already listened and that the dead had answered her. She wanted to tell him the truth, that Obinna had come back to point and to punish and that she did not know if justice felt like a clean thing. Instead she nodded and held the priest's hand for a moment. His hand was warm and rough. At night Obinna came sometimes. He moved like a shadow but not cruel. He did not shout or hurt anyone more. He walked through the market where men had planned and he stood by the doors of those who had lied. People would wake and say they felt a cold in their bones and a weight in their hearts. Some would cry in the night and then in the morning go to the elders to say they were sorry. Others left without apology. The town changed. The plans that had formed in jokes and anger broke and fell like dry leaves. Adana watched him from the window. He stood sometimes by the old tree at the edge of the road. He would look up at the stars and his face would be very soft. When he looked at her, his eyes did not burn with anger the way they had at first. They were steady and tired. It felt like he had done a long road and now he had to rest his feet. One night, when the moon was full and bright like a coin, Adana could not sleep. She felt pulled by something she could not name. The house was quiet. Chisholm breathed slow in the next room. Ezekwesili had tried to sleep and failed. Adana walked outside and down the small path to the old tree where Obinna often stood. He was there. He wore the same white shirt. It looked a little cleaner that night. His skin was pale and smooth. His eyes held that tired glow. He did not come close. He waited as if he had the right to stand where the living slept. "You have done much," Adana said when she reached him. Her voice was small but it did not tremble. "You have shown them the truth. You have found the guilty. Obinna looked at her. He did not smile. He did not speak. He raised his hand once and pointed toward the market, toward small houses, toward the elder's place. He had pointed often before. Now he looked like a man who had finished a hard piece of work and had one small thing left to do. Why are you here? Adana asked, not afraid but tired. She wanted to know what would happen next. She wanted to know if he ever felt the same longing she felt. She wanted to know if he remembered their wedding song. Obinna's eyes met hers. There was something gentle in them now, something that made her remember his laugh. He lifted his hand and touched his mouth as if to speak, and then he pointed at himself. He opened his mouth and a sound came out. It was not voice like the living's voice. It was more like the wind saying a name. Adana leaned in. She could hear nothing but the night. She felt the air move. He did not say words like she would, but she felt his meaning like a small bell. He wanted to rest. That is what I want too, she said. Her lips trembled. I have wanted to hold you again, even if only for a prayer. But I cannot keep you here. You told them. You made the truth come out. You punished those who hid. If you go, I will be left with the empty you left. I will keep your memories and your coral bead and your jokes. Obinna reached out and his hand touched the air above her head. She did not move away. The touch was cold and made her hair stand on end. It felt like a warm thing suddenly turned to ice. But the touch also felt like mercy. She felt something soften inside her chest that had been tight for days. Will you truly leave? She asked, though he already had begun to fade like morning mist. He bowed his head slowly. Then he lifted his hand and pointed to the house. He pointed to Chisholm sleeping and then to Ezekwesili sitting like a lost man. He looked back at Adana and then he touched his heart with 2 fingers. The gesture was small and old. Said, I loved you. Adana's throat tightened and the tears came. She knelt without thinking and laid her forehead to the ground, the way people do when they ask for mercy or when they say thank you to God. Her mouth moved. She prayed without knowing all the words. She asked the dead to go, and she begged God to take them. She asked for forgiveness for the town and for the family. She asked for Obinna to rest. Obinna, she whispered. I free you. I take back the vow I made by the grave. I release you from my words. I let you go. The air moved like a hand let go of a string. Obinna's face seemed to shine a little brighter. He looked at her with eyes that were not harsh now. He reached out and cupped her cheek with a touch that made her shiver. Thank you, she felt in her bones. It was not a voice. It was a feeling like the sun on a cold morning. He smiled with that easy half-smile he used to have when he wanted to make a joke. Then he closed his eyes and, slowly, he began to fade. Not like smoke that is blown away, but like sugar dissolving in tea. He shone like a small light and then it spread and then it was gone. Adana felt the empty after him like a cold pit. She sat on the ground and pressed her hand to the place he had touched. Her skin felt warm and then cold. The tree above her made soft noises in the breeze as if it was sad, too. The moon seemed to grow softer after that. The air did not hold the same sharpness it had the nights before. In the distance, a dog barked and then stopped. The town felt quieter, like a room after a loud song. People would later say the wind had changed that night. Some would say that they felt peace for the first time. Others would say they felt a bad calm, like before a storm. Ezekwesili sat on the porch the next morning and folded his hands. He was not a brave man now, but he had a small new thing in his eyes that looked like regret and less fear. Chisholm still slept. The healers had come and helped as best they could. They said her body needed rest and her soul needed time. Adana stayed by the bed and told Chisholm about small things, about the river and the bread and the time Obinna had made a joke about a broken bicycle. She spoke so Chisholm would have a small library of memories to open when she woke. Neighbors began to bring food again. It was careful at first, then a little bolder. A woman brought soup and put it on the table and hurried away. A child left a flower on the steps and ran off before anyone could say thank you. Adana walked to Obinna's grave in the late afternoon. The dirt had settled and the grass had begun to grow a little. She knelt and took off her coral bead and placed it on the stone. She did not cry hard this time. Her eyes were dry, but they held a shape of sadness like glass. "I let you go," she said to the stone, to the empty air, to the memory of his laugh. "You did what you had to do. Now rest." She stood and walked back to the house. The town moved around her and life went on. People fixed roofs and sold tomatoes and laughed sometimes, small and half ready to hope again. The world kept moving. The dead had answered her vow, and then they had rested. Adana did not know if she had done right. She only knew that the choice had been hers and that she had to live with it. She touched the place where Obina had touched her cheek that night and felt a small spark like a tiny warm stone. It was a memory she would keep. At dusk, she sat by the window and watched the road. The moon rose like a safe lamp. She thought of the things that had been lost and the things that had been found. She thought of her sister lying inside and of the town that had to stitch itself back together like torn cloth. Outside, a child laughed. Inside, a pot warmed for dinner. The world had a steady beat again. It would not be the same, could not be the same. But for the first time in many nights, Adana felt a small thing she had not felt in a long time. An almost gentle hope that maybe, slowly, the town could learn to hold truth without breaking everything it loved.